we have a great podcast for this Friday. Where we are, it's raining. Is it raining by you, Derek?
Yep.
It is?
Yep.
I'm hoping Coach Vogel's weather is sunny. But yes, we have our Friday podcast, our prospect podcast today. We have a great guest today. As usual, I have my co-host, Coach Depascale here, and we're going to talk some speed, some strength and conditioning with a fantastic athletic performance coach, Coach Adam Vogel. He currently is at Homewood Flossmoor High School. That's a mouthful right there, out in Illinois, and is in charge of strength and conditioning, the athletic performance area. He really, really has a great background. I have his presentation pulled up on one of my tabs here that hopefully we'll get a chance to go through. But he's one of the innovators, amazingly, and Derek. And he has, I think you have a sports training facility too, right, Coach?
No, I do very little private training, but I got it in my basement, and I got a couple spots if ever I'm doing some private training with guys, I can go. Okay,
cool. And we'll let Coach go into his background and everything. But it's interesting because Illinois is like one of the hubs now of speed and strength and conditioning and innovation in that area. So it's really, really interesting how these hubs form. A lot of the back in the early 2000s. When we were in North Jersey, like that's where, I got my start with the whole, I had a facility and then was doing that kind of conditioning. Bill Parisi was obviously the first to really do a lot of that stuff. And that that was a hub up there. We had Joe DeFranco. We had Ben Tonin. We had Brad Vaccaro. We had all these guys.
Rooney.
Who else?
Rooney.
Martin Rooney, right? What's the guy out west towards where you were? That's real well known. He was
Chuck Mound.
Chuck Mound.
Yeah, we were just shooting them out, dude. I don't know.
Yeah,
Look,
Brian Martin.
Oh God,
Brian
yeah,
Martin
they were everywhere.
Brian Martin, who's slightly south of there, I would say,
right?
He was in Martinsville. Brian Martin, and so there was.
And side note, Brian Martin, actually, sorry, Coach, not to. He just hit me up the other day. He's living down here now.
Brian Martin lives down here.
Dude, he hit me up like we got to go. Like he's like, let's hit lunch. All right, let's go.
He's got salt working. Brian
I was just gonna say it. He's got on some angle, Coach. Like that's what's coming. But absolutely,
he used to train my very first draft class when I was an agent. An NFL agent. He actually trained my.
I don't know. He has to know that we're working together. If he doesn't, he's gonna shit. He's always got one of those. Yeah, phenomenal. Coach, appreciate you taking the time, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, if you could go into your background and we get off track sometimes, Coach. But
it's all good.
I'd love for you to go in your background.
Squirrels. We just saw squirrels.
The reason why I brought it up is because. And Derek would definitely, he could chime in on this, but we've really found that like that Chicago area, Illinois, has become a real pocket of innovation in that space, in the space you're in, and we find it very interesting, obviously, because we do so many of these podcasts, we talk to so many different people, and this is a place that a lot of stuff has been coming up from. So, without further ado, Coach, please go into your background. And really talk about everything that, how you got to this point and, your background in athletics and coaching.
Yeah, thanks, coaches. I'll kind of work backwards. Like you said, it's sunny here today. It is a little chilly. However, we got great weather, so that's awesome. And as like you said, Illinois and the Chicagoland area really kind of has a pocket right now. So the funny thing about that, me being at home with Flossmoor, I've been here, this is my third year here. Is Chris Corfist is our sprints coach, and then Rob Assis is our jumps coach. We got some other great coaches as well. Those are probably the two most well known. But we got a real good pocket just at our school. Then you go outside of that, right? We got Tony Holler, we got Brad Dixon with the sprint based football and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
We got Mike Gatone, who's in charge of USC weightlifting. He's out of the Lake Zurich area, just north suburbs. We got Tommy Christian with TC Boost and their speed training. So we got a lot of great things going on in our area. So I think it's just kind of like what you guys talking about. Cause I remember following DeFranco and all the guys that you guys mentioned when I got started, and like it's almost like a competition within a competition, right? So like you start seeing someone do something really well, you're like, oh, I'm gonna take that, and then you put your own spin on it. And next thing you know, you got a lot of good things happening in one small area, which is kind of cool. But before that, I spent the previous 12 or 13 years at Bradley Bourbonnais, which is another mouthful of a school's name. And I was there coaching football. I was also doing strength and conditioning. At that time, I was also defense coordinator, defensive line. And before that, I was playing indoor and arena ball. Arena 2 with the Quad City Steamwheelers. I played out there in Reading, Pennsylvania for 3 years, and I played with a team in Evansville, Indiana, my first year because I was a graduate at Indiana State. That's where I played football at from 2001 to 2005. Played defensive line there. Then before that, I was actually in high school, and I was doing football, wrestling, rugby, baseball, track and field. I played every sport I get my hands on, right? So anything that had contact and physicality, that's what I wanted to do. So originally I was born and raised in Iowa, moved out to Illinois, I've been sticking out here pretty much ever since, other than some stints playing football.
Very cool. Very cool. Great background. And, I was going through the presentation, that you have on some of the stuff that you're talking about. It's interesting because you use multiple different surfaces to really develop your speed and explosion stuff, which I think is really interesting, especially where you are in Chicago, where you probably are stuck inside sometimes, right?
You gotta get creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I think it's really, really, it's important because me and Derek were just texting back and forth this morning because some of the kids that we've coached that were for our played on our 7-on-7 club, they dominated the Ocean County and Monmouth County track and field championships, and then we were talking about some other kids as well, but Derek is starting to really learn about like track times and how it kind of some of that stuff, how it correlates to football. Obviously a lot of stuff that we've been doing with these interviews, you really see how there's certain correlations in that area, obviously. But it's interesting because I saw a great post by Jim Tressel. Yeah, it was an interview with Jim Tressel and Ted Ginn Senior.
Yep.
Did you see that, Derek?
Yeah. He's he was on his Jim Tressel now has his own little podcast that he runs. And I saw it like when he was talking to him. Yeah, so that's from his, like, it's a clip from his podcast. And go ahead, because I already know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Jim Tressel was talking about why he liked recruiting. And obviously I know you do strength and speed and strength that complement each other. I get all that. But he was saying why he likes recruiting guys who run track and guys who compete in track versus guys who are just guys in the weight room. And the thing that was really interesting about it was that he brought out not just the speed aspect, you can time them, which obviously is important, but the competitive aspect, meaning you versus me, and I got to compete you versus me man on man in order to win. And I think that's a really, really I think important aspect of and you get it in wrestling. You get it in a different way. You get it in wrestling, But I think that's an important aspect in athletic development. I think that's what track per se does. But that's my lead in kind of with, what are you kind of really like the evolution of your program in athletic performance? What are some of the things that you're starting to do and see?
Yeah, so some things that we'll talk about like almost like two halves, right? We have the strength side and the weight room, what we can do in the weight room, and we have the speed side. And so we want to make sure that we're developing the most complete athlete that we can. And so one of the things that I'm really focused on is we'll have these things called phases of development. So we want to make sure that we're developing the athlete holistically throughout their training ages. And so then as we go through those things and they start to earn and accomplish different metrics that we're trying to achieve for their sport, and then we'll start to look at what are their limiting factors and start to focus on those. So going with the speed thing, we know that like speed's probably the thing that grows the slowest. So we know that like we have to start sprinting them as early as we can, and hopefully they're sprinting in middle school and going and coming up that way where they sprint before and they play in sports where they are sprinting. So we'll start out with making sure that we run fly 10s. So our fly 10s are a 30-yard in into a 10-yard fly. So really we're doing a 40. We're just timing the last 10 yards of the 40. Yep. And so with that, we do that every week, at least once a week, preferably twice, but usually it's like church to me, right? So we go every single week, we don't miss. And so we're getting at least 2 to 4. Yeah, we're getting at least 2 to 4 sprints in a week. If they're in season, they only do 2. If they're out of season, they do 4. And we make sure that we have that aspect, because then everything else is going to build off of that, right? So then we break down that sprint work into acceleration, and we go into our change of direction, which then turns into agility work, right? So because we know that sport is going to be them reacting off of the stimulus, whether it be a ball or another person. And so if we don't raise the ceiling, meaning the speed part of it, then they're going to be slow at everything else, right? So we want to make sure that we're really focusing on that from the get-go. And then from the strength side, and I'll be kind of brief on this, is we'll start out with movement patterns. We want to see that they can move properly before we load and build strength. And then after that, we want to develop power. And then when I say we want to develop speed in the weight room, it's not talking about developing speed to make them faster sprinting wise. It's the speed of the bar. We want them to be able to develop, we want the power to be produced in a certain amount of time based on their position. So like O lineman, D lineman, we want them to hit peak power in under a half a second, 0.45 seconds, because they're closer to the ball. They're closer to the person they make contact with. They got to do it quicker than a wide receiver or DB. So for them, they got to hit their peak power within about 0.9 seconds.
That's really so. I'll go first. The first part I want to touch on. So the 40-yard dash, the flying 40s, when you're timing the last 10 yards of the 40-yard dash. So is that because you're trying to see how well they hold their speed, or is that where max speed is being developed at that last 10 meters? 10 yards?
Yeah, so that last 10 yards where max speed is happening. So we're just measuring their average of max speed, right? So peak max speed would be if we had a radar gun on them, right? So we get their max like in an instant. Or if you use GPS, that's getting your instant max speed. Now we're going from the last 10 yards, we're getting their average of their last 10 yards, the last 10 yards to get their max speed. And as they start to hit a ceiling, like some of our track athletes, we'll back them up to 60 yards. So they'll have a 40 or 50 yard lead in, and then get the last 10 yards, depending on where they're at within their development, because they might need more time to create that max velocity. Where most of our kids, though, they hit it within that first 30 yards. They hit their max velocity that last 10.
Yep. And it's we do it. So, we utilize all the flying 10s and that stuff at my high school right now. And believe me, it's a different type of, when you're telling them, I'm timing the last 10, right? Like it just adds a different level of mental capacity for the kid themselves to kind of get there. Even with the bigs, right? Like even the bigs that everybody's like, oh, a 40, this or that. It's like, no, like they're still gotta get up and go. And for them to sustain it for that last 10, and it's rapid fire, right? We're just rolling through, go. And there's some great statistics I've heard recently about the whole aspect of sprinting and how most people never sprint after like age 28. It's like a sorry ass stat, to be honest with you, when you want to come down to it, that human beings really don't do that. But I love what you said about creating it from the jump. Like even middle school, you want to start like hoping that these guys are sprinting on the regular, because that's like the biggest part of it is top speed. Like you want to be there, get there, and have these guys understanding that sprinting is pivotal. Right.
Yeah.
And you need to get to that max point, and for them to give them kind of a basis or foundation for it, like I think it's absolutely like pivotal to get to where they want to be.
Coach,
Yeah,
this is my pitch for everybody to invest in their facilities, right? This is your facility indoor, right?
Yes, yeah.
This is their indoor.
Yeah, I know, Coach. I've done the research, man. Like this has been some weeks in the work to get Coach on here, man. He's a busy guy.
I mean, I love unbelievable what you guys have done. This was what, 2015 originally, I guess?
Yeah, 14, 15, yeah.
14,
and so
15.
we got probably some of the nicest facilities in the state. We're really fortunate, and like you were just saying with the Fly 10s too, with that, like, so you're talking about competition. What Jim Tressel's quote was, we never run them singularity. We have 2 lanes always going, sometimes 4 lanes. So they're competing with somebody
100%.
else as they go. And then we have TVs up, and they see their time right after they run past the lasers. Their time flashes up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What timing system do you use, Coach? Like what do you use?
So I use Arena Gear.
Okay.
So the reason why I use Arena Gear is before I use Zybeck, and that's what the NFL combines use.
Right.
The problem that I have with Zybeck is it takes so long to set up. And so because it uses Cat 6 wires, and so I went to Zybeck because it doesn't have the wires. It does have radio frequency, and that's why I like it, is because it's so accurate compared to some of the other systems. And I'm not knocking the other systems. Whatever you have to, it also comes down to affordability too, right? But,
if you have a system, like you're already above the game, right? Like so, for most of us, we're out there hand time and doing the best that we can. So understand, like this is what we're kind of working with, you know.
That's what you talk about at the end of the screen here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, and then it shows their time. What is that, on an app too that it comes up?
Yeah, so we track all their times in Team Builder, and so then there's another TV on another wall there that has all their that has the leaderboard. So they can not only do they run their sprints competing with who they're competing with in the sprint, they can see everybody in the during the day and where their times are at.
Record, rank, and publish, right? Record, rank, and publish. Nobody wants to be at the bottom of a list. That's just how we're working. Like, it's all good. I love it. I absolutely love it. And the kids, that's all they'll talk about, dude. Like you might have some dude that's, he did first block of the day, somebody runs a better time, third block of the day, and now he's like, what are we doing? Right? Like, so I think that's awesome. That's so good to hear.
Then they can also earn dog tags. So they earn we have silicone dog tags for the mile per hour that they hit, and they earn dog tags for that. So it's really competitive. The kids really like it. They've really come into a point where they look forward to our speed days. What we've added to that though is we also time their acceleration. So we give them a 5-yard lead in, and we time their next 10 yards. So the 5 to the 15, we time that as well. And the reason why we do that is because we know that that's so important for most sports, right?
Football. I mean, look, football, you want to talk about that point of it. Like that's where we're making our money, right? Like, that phase of from when I have the ball to now explosion forward, like get me 10 yards, we're good, right? So I love that it's sports specific as well, which I think this type of athlete now, student athlete at the high school level, right? They've been brought up on why, right? Like, why am I doing this? How does it help me in my sport? So when you can give that direct correlation, and Dave's heard me say this stuff 1,000 times, right? That direct correlation to how it's helping them individually in their sport to get better. Why are we doing this? Is it whatever that? Okay, here it is. This is why, right? Now go focus and go. Oh, okay, coach, no problem. Right. Whereas back in the day, if your coach said run through a wall, you're like, sure, I guess I'm running through a wall today. Like, okay, we're, whatever. So now you can kind of, give them that direct action as to why it's happening and what they're doing it for.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the other thing too is we're blessed with those awesome facilities. The place I was at before, we didn't have anywhere to run sprints inside. So what we ended up doing, just for people that are in that constraint, is which is probably
majority of the people that we're talking about right now, right? Yeah. Which is like this is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got true form treadmills, and this is actually we have about 2,700 kids. So we have our freshmen. So we have we call our class, our performance training class, strength and performance. So we have 4 years of it because in Illinois, they take 4 years of high school PE. So they do freshman strength and performance at our South weight room, which doesn't have a place where they can sprint. So over there, we have 2 true form treadmills, and they rotate going on the true form treadmills, and they do a 10-yard or 10-second sprint. And we have someone next to them watching the peak miles per hour so that they're also working on their top end speed when we don't have an area where they can run. So I did that at my last facility as well. So we're still getting our max velocity. We're just doing it in a different way.
Very cool. Very cool.
South weight room, Dave. The South weight room. Like, hey, you guys got to go to that weight room today. Like, there's multiple. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff. And then, so I saw how you like kind of structure your program, and it's really, really cool.
Awesome.
You kind of do a little bit of a different thing. Like you're doing speed, I think Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're doing it. You focus on this on one day, and you focus on this on the second day, and you focus on this. Talk a little bit about how that microcycling that you do.
Yeah. So if let's say we're gonna go through some scenarios. So if you're a student athlete in the class during the day, right? On Monday you're gonna do your sprint work. We have a modified block, so we have either after dress time we have either about 35 to 40 minutes. Otherwise, we have about 60 minutes. So on Mondays, if you're in the class, you're gonna do your sprint work, and then the other 3 out of the 5 days, because we modify block, we only go 4 out of the 5 that we see the kids. So the other 3 days you're going to lift, and then we'll have them go on the shred mill, which is our treadmill, and then we got a T-Apex, and we're starting to get more of those as well to do any sort of resisted acceleration or change of direction in class. And then if you're out of season, when you come after school on if you're out of season, you come after school 3 days a week. So one day we'll be working on more acceleration. The other 2 will be working on change of direction into agility. Now, if you're like swimming, we're not going to work on those things. We'll do other things with you, working on usually it's a vertical force, because if you lay down sideways and you're trying to push off a wall, that would be vertical force, right? We're just changing the vector of the person. So, but if it's a sport like anything with running and change direction, all that kind of stuff, we hit most of our change direction agility work after school. We do a little bit of it during the day using T-Apex, which is just a different version of 1080 sprint.
Very, very interesting. It's you're using multiple different things with respect to, obviously, because you're indoors some of the time to be able to develop. Do you find that those different types of sprinting gives a variation to them, or is it all kind of part of like the stages of your program? Because like the shred mill, I think it tracks it like the velocity, right, in the miles per hour type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like with that, like, okay, we got our fly 10 time, right? And then we have our acceleration time, our 5 and a 10 yard. So then what I do is what we're getting into now with our athletes is we're looking at the discrepancy between the two. So for example, let's say you're at a 0.94 fly 10 time. Okay. Then you should probably be somewhere about a 1.2 acceleration. Well, let's say your acceleration is 1.34. So that's telling us that we need to do more shred mill gear 2, meaning the early acceleration. So we're going to work on that with you. If you're if your time is not in the correct ratio for acceleration to max speed. Now, let's say it's the opposite. Let's say you need to work on more max speed. Then we'll put them on gear 3 or gear 4, working on more of the top end speed on the shred mill. And so we're using that to basically, for lack of a better term, prescribe what they need. Like when we talk about attacking limiting factors, we're going to attack whatever the limiting factors are in sprinting. Now, if they get to a point where both of those numbers are really good, then we look at their change of direction. And so what we do for timing change of direction is we took all the Tony Villani XPE stuff. And so we'll do a roll 90, we'll do a break plant separate 90, and then we'll do Y-base crossover 90. We'll time those 3, both directions, left and right. And then we'll also do a 180. So they'll run
Yeah.
10 yards and then have them come back 5 yards. And so we work on all that deceleration. And then if that's the problem, the limiting factor, then we start putting them on T-Apex. They'll start doing some change of direction there, and we'll give them some tools to work on the change of direction.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've seen that Tony Villani. I've seen some of the videos on what he does there from direction in the tracking of that standpoint. And then competing, obviously, in that area, obviously makes a big difference. As far as like how you structure your program with athletes that are in season versus out of season, how do you do that?
Yeah. So freshmen, sophomores, we pretty much treat them like red shirts. They're going to lift normally, right? Because we know that most of them need to work on strength. Now, with everyone else, okay, so like freshmen, usually we get them out of, if you're a new transfer, we get them out of the movement phase within 6 to 9 weeks, sometimes quicker if they have a background and they've lifted before, things like that. So body weight, Dr. Yesse's 1x20. Then we'll start to add linear periodization where we're just doing like 3 to 4 sets of 10, down to 5, down to 3. And then now we're ready to work on strength. So then we'll work on strength until they hit certain KPIs. So to make it simple is typically we want to see most of our athletes go from a front squat at 1.5 times their body weight. Once they hit that, I'm talking about males. Females, it's about 1.2, 1.1. And then when we go to back squat, so then they can graduate to back squat. If they hit 1.7 times their body weight on back squat, for most athletes, sometimes it's 2.0. Like I want our running backs to be at 2.0 or better. I want our linebackers to be at 2.0 or better. But then they'll graduate to tracking power development. So if they're out of season and they hit and they're in the strength phase, they'll do strength all 3 days that we lift, but they'll get a concurrent method. So we'll do our plyos and our Olympic lifts to get the different velocities and speed that they need to do for sport. But if they're hit the 1.7 or better, now we're working on the power work. And so they'll do 1 day of heavy once a week. And then the other 2 days we'll be working on speed strength or strength speed, meaning about 75% of their max for strength speed and about 40 to 60% of their max for speed strength. And so then they're trying to hit certain velocities to make more power, because we know that we can create more power with speed and strength, not just strength. Now, if they're in season, even if they're in the strength phase, we're going to treat them like a power athlete. So they're going to have 1 day heavy a week to make sure that we're preventing any sort of injuries. And then we're going to do the other 2 days of speed strength or a game day workout. Because we'll train on game day. We just won't go heavy. Everything's light and fast. I got it from Jimmy Radcliffe in Oregon when Chip Kelly was there. Just basically priming the system so that they're ready to go that afternoon for their competitions.
It's awesome.
Did with the priming part, how did athletes respond to that? Because that's an unusual, like I remember when Chip Kelly was doing it, and then when he was doing it in the pros, it did not go over well. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I think those guys are so conditioned, Dave, to doing things a certain way, right? And like, hey, this is game day. I need to be ready. It's like, this is actually helping you, right? Like I would compare it almost to warming up your car in the morning on a cold day, right? Like you don't want to just hop in that thing and rip and go. You want to get your system ready and like, up and start it, right? It's like a warm up before the warm up, So I think it's just two kinds of, and look, we all know how that ended for Chip Kelly in Philly, right? Like when his NFL, those NFL guys are a little different. But I think if you can get in on those guys early.
I'm curious on the priming, like how do you approach it? And then like, are you able to measure results from that to be able to quantify for the athletes from that standpoint? Because all athletes some athletes may view it differently. You know what I mean? Obviously in high school, they're probably going to do, whatever you ask them to do for the most part. But I'm just curious if you're able to like quantify that and be able to measure that.
Yeah. Yep. So I've done it a few different ways. Right now we track their vertical on game day, and we also have them, it's optional if the student athlete wants to weigh in and do body comp. And the reason why we do that is if they're losing more than 2% of their body weight in season within a week, that increases the injury. I think it's about 17%. So we want to know
Do you
that.
see a lot of that, Coach? Do you see that? Do you see more of that?
In the fall when they're coming out of August? That's typically where we see that. And then every once in a while, if a wrestler's cutting a lot of weight, but the way they got the parameters now, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You got to be a certain level of hydration and all that stuff. This isn't like 90s where we're talking totally.
Yeah.
Guys going rogue here. Okay.
Yeah. And so we look at their body comp just using one of those hand dynamometer things. We look at their body comp because maybe it's an athlete, like because if it's one of our offensive linemen losing that kind of weight, but they're changing their body in a good way, then we're okay with it, right? So that's kind of where we look at the metrics that way. They really enjoy it. If I forget to put the game day workout up for a team, they get all mad at me like, Coach, where's our game day workout? They want to know right away because
it's part of their routine now. It's something that to get them ready. It's the same thing. Like, hey, I got to have these gloves for the game. Like this is part of my process. Like, and that's what I love that. Like, if they don't know any different, this is what they're doing, right? Like they'll get to college now and not have that and be like. Like you need to put together a game day workout for me. And then some of those guys that they're going to who might be their strength and conditioning guy says, what are you talking about? Like, we don't do that on game day. There's so many different, methods to doing this. Like, we compare it to like, there's a 1,000 ways to do just anything, right? Like there's a bunch of ways to skin a cat, but like, what is the right way? You have to know what works for your athletes, right? I think that, and that's part of it for you guys with the max numbers that you have within the building. The fact that you're able to focus on each one of these, the things and the ways and the processes for each kid individually. And I'm sure you've seen it across the board. What works for one does not work for others, or this is the best way to do this sport, right? Or, male, female, or sophomore, freshman, right? Like, how much of it is sport specific? How much of it is age based, right? Like which takes tier in terms of when you're just overall looking at a lot of these things, which one do you focus on more? Is it the age? Is it the sport? Is it, what is it, Coach?
So freshman, sophomore year, they're all doing basically a lot of the same things. It's very little differencing by gender or by sport or anything like that. Very little change. Then when they get to junior, senior year, then we start to add more nuance to it. Now I'll back up in a second about what they do get specific, because they do get a little specificity depending on where we're at with things. So junior, senior year, they get a little bit more specificity. So obviously we got those phases of development. That takes care of their training age, right? So we're not going to load if they have bad movement patterns, right? So they have to have the proper movement patterns. Then we load. Once they hit the loading numbers, then we go to power. Once they hit the power numbers, we go to time to peak power, which is our speed. And then once they hit their time to peak power, we'll build capacity with them by getting more reps and doing velocity drop-offs. We also individualize with all of them. They are starting to individualize with all of them their speed and what do they need more of. Do they need more gear 2 or do they need more gear 3 or 4 based on where they're at with their speed? So that's where we individualize holistically with our junior seniors, and then also with our freshmen sophomores coming up. And then sports wise, like for example, our baseball, softball, rotational athletes, golf, things like that, they don't need to do as much overhead or upper body pressing. So we'll sub out, like for example, if we're doing dumbbell bench on our second upper body or dumbbell incline, they won't do that. They'll do some sort of med ball rotational throws. So we'll just sub out based on what their sports need. With plyometrics, let's say most of our sports like soccer, football, those kinds of things are going to do more horizontal jumping. Whereas if you're basketball, volleyball, where instead of having to do a horizontal double broad jump, you're going to do a drop jump into a vertical, right? Because we know that they need to go more vertical as opposed to horizontal. Right. So we make that really easy switch there. And then other specifics like things for our track athletes and stuff, we might add more Natera ISOs. We might do more of the spring ankle series, the Cal Dietz Corfus stuff, and we'll do some and things like that. Yeah. So for them, when they get into season and stuff, we'll make those changes for them as well, because they don't need as much axial loading in season as like some of the other sports might need or do. And running back axial loading like barbell squats or deadlifts or things like that. Yeah.
Right. And then what is the, like, how do you, because Tony talks a lot about continuing to get them to peak over the course of their season. and continuing to improve max speed versus and power versus what a lot of people focus on is just trying to maintain and not lose.
Yeah.
Is there stuff specifically that you try to do there and to continue that development? Because I know it's obviously a slippery thing, because when they're in season, you're trying to balance, not getting them injured or anything like that.
Yeah, little tweaks and stuff. We'll have to make individual calls for that. If we have to like sub out, let's say they hurt their shoulder or rotator cuff. Okay, you're gonna go to a single arm dumbbell press and dumbbell bench instead of using barbell bench, right? Or like it might be fine. It just feels weird in a different position. So we might go to using a Swiss bar or football bar for their bench or something along those lines. Or like especially contact injuries, like the O lineman and stuff. Hey, they're banged up. Hey, you want to do a safety squat bar instead of a barbell squat. You know what I mean? So those are some simple things there. As far as developing speed, we have developed speed in season with our football players. They're faster at the end of the season than they are at the beginning, and continually have done that because we don't stop doing max velocity sprinting during the season.
Right.
Because so what happens is if you don't do it, you lose it, right? So it's the
100%.
Principle of reversibility. So while everybody else is stopping that, we're not.
Right. You're continuing to push the envelope.
Yeah.
It's you see so many guys, right? It's always that conversation about losing things within season, right? Because everybody gets so hyper focused on, I can't get him hurt, or I don't want to do this, or even just the overall mentality of, like, that's the culture, right? Around it. Hey, we bring them in, day after a game, run, lift, film, right? It's like, hey, we're just doing this to push it. Don't be doing too much weight, dude. You're whatever that. I think that element of continuing to get faster will now, at the end of the season, when everybody is at their lowest of whatever when it comes to their strength and conditioning stuff, now you're going the other direction. Like, that is an absolute game changer, and I don't think coaches embrace that or understand that enough to even kind of implement it. So I'm so glad you touched on that.
Yeah, and the same thing in the weight room with the strength and the power work. So if we're going heavy one day a week, so what we'll do is we'll go 0.3 to 0.5 meters per second when we're going heavy. So if you're in season, I want you at 0.5. So if you're out of season, 0.3 is usually about 90% of your max. If you're doing 3 reps, it's about 85% of your max if you're doing 5 reps. If we're doing in season at 0.5, it's about 80 to 85% of your max, on 85 on 3s and about 80% on 5s. So they're not going to feel the DOMs from going heavy, but we're still in that band of the developing strength. And then, for example, let's say they're doing let's say squat and heavy incline on that Monday or Tuesday, I'm sorry. And then Thursday, we're going to do our speed strength stuff with them. And so that might be a Bulgarian or a split squat, and it might be bench. So after 3 weeks, we flip those 2 exercises. So now they built up the ceiling. We started building the ceiling of strength. We'll transfer it to power. And so then we'll see that power go up. We can hold on to that strength for 3 weeks, right? Because we know that, but they're still doing something lower body heavy and something upper body heavy. It's just going to be a different lift, right? So we're going to go from bench to incline to bench, and let's say bilateral squat to split squat. And so when we flip those, then we'll see the power development go up. We don't hit plateaus because 3 weeks later after that, we flip back to what we were doing, and we see that strength continue to go up because we kept it. But then we see that we got to work on the power because we in that lift, we're still working on lower body power, but we're just switching it up so we don't hit plateaus. So it's kind of like a really, really butchered version of West Side / undulating
barbell.
Yeah.
How about, I'm curious about, so I remember several years back, a guy in California, I can't remember, he was a guy who trained a lot of NFL guys, and he had found that there was like a correlation between hex bar deadlifts and that like strength to weight ratio, and what their speed capabilities could be. Do you utilize the hex bar deadlift at all within your program, or that's not something?
Oh, we do. Yeah, we do. So like we do it a little bit differently. So We also do cleans.
Okay.
In my last school, we used to do snatches. Yes, but we don't do snatches anymore. So
snatch is so tough for the younger kids.
It is tough. Yeah. It has less of a transfer of training for football than clean does. So
okay.
Yeah. So,
that's good to know. That's phenomenal to know.
Yeah.
Lets me know I'm doing. Lets us know we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. So we'll do cleans, and so with our cleans, what we do as we're teaching the freshmen how to do cleans, the other two metrics are we want to get into 1.5 times the body weight on a front squat, and we want them to deadlift, straight bar deadlift I call it clean grip straight bar deadlift. So we're going to be in a clean grip. We're not going wide with our hands or narrow with our hands. We're not doing a sumo. Our feet are underneath our hips, and we're not going over under. We're going over. Hence the clean grip. So that this way, if they can deadlift 250 and we can run squat over 1.5 times our body weight, we should be able to, once we learn the mechanics of clean, we should be able to clean 230 or better. And that's kind of one of our metrics for football players. Hey, let's try to get them all when they get to varsity to 230 or better. Our best athlete,
that works. That works.
Yeah, and our best athlete should be at about 250. So going back to your trap bar, once they hit 250 on straight bar, then we let them go to trap bar deadlift. And then with trap bar deadlift, we just we want to get them about 2.5 times their body weight on the trap bar deadlift as far as a strength KPI for strength.
Right.
And then we'll start worrying about like trap bar jumps. We'll start worrying about like moving the bar fast with trap bar lifts so that they're producing rate of force development that way and forcing the ground. With our baseball players, one of our metrics is trying to get them to deadlift 400 pounds. So if they can get the 400-pound deadlift on trap bar, that's a KPI for us for our baseball players.
Very,
awesome.
very interesting.
That's so awesome to hear. That's such
KPI a little bit, just for people that don't know. What is KPI and how does it, correlate to everything that you're doing?
Yeah. So KPIs just stand for key performance indicators. So we've tried to find metrics that in the lifts that we do that have a high transfer of what we call transfer of training to the sports that they play. So with the baseball players, the Dr. Josh Heenan has this thing called the 90-mile-an-hour formula, and that trap bar deadlift at 400 pounds is one that was one of the pieces of key performance indicators to kids throwing 90 miles an hour. So
interesting.
So that's why that's in there. So same with like the
second they hear that, wait, 90 miles an hour, I have to get to this weight, right? Like this is what I'm doing and how it is, because here's the solid of what you got to do and go from there.
That's really interesting. Okay, good. I'm sorry. Good.
Yeah, we got about 8 metrics for the 90 mile an hour. And so so they can know that when they're in the weight room, these things will help you with what your goal is, right? And same thing with the sprinting and stuff is the one according to Matt Ray's research is if you go to 1.7 times your body weight on back squat, that's where the strength, like that's like the minimum amount of strength that you want to have to transfer to acceleration. And then from that point, it's going to be more muscular coordination. So it's not a bad thing that they're stronger than 1.7 times their body weight. It is, however, going to be what we call a diminishing return.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can get you stronger. We want to get you stronger, but if we focus on that, we're not going to see as much of a carryover to your sport as if we start working on power development. So if we work on power development, once you hit 1.7, we know that that's going to transfer more to your sport once you get strong enough. But I always liken it to this. If I'm swinging a wiffle ball bat, okay, or a light little league bat, am I going to be able to hit more home runs that way? Or if I got a 32-ounce BB core bat, that's going to hit more home runs, right? So I got to get the strength, okay, from a wiffle ball bat to a 32-ounce, and then I'll see those home runs. So it doesn't matter. I can
that's a great
as fast as a baseball bat, right? But it's not going to hit home runs. And so get strong, become a baseball bat, and then we'll hit some dingers.
No, that's awesome. That's huge. Go ahead, Dave.
That makes a lot of sense too. Like I never thought about some of that stuff in that way. But you're 100% right. Like if you're swinging a wiffle bat, like a slim guy can hit as many home runs as a guy who's a big, huge, strong guy, because there's a point where that power is not relevant anymore, right? And it's the same thing in like the squatting. So other than like, I guess maybe an offensive lineman where they don't have to sprint as much, or they still have to be athletic and move fast. But you're right, like the skill. So a skill position guy, like in football or any sport, most sports are skill related. They don't need that excessive amount of extra squat strength, because all it does is end up diminishing their overall power and explosion, and they're not able. You're better off focusing now once you get to that level of getting the explosion and power, and that ends up helping them athletically more. Just to kind of translate for. Yeah, because you're so smart, and the things that it's like the coaches that are listening try to help them understand, what it all means and that's what it means, because there was one of my eye-opening moments as a coach. This is going back to when Pete Carroll was at USC. His strength and conditioning coach had this like 3-4-5 method where it was like I think it was like 300-pound clean, 400-pound squat, 500-pound deadlift maximums. Anything above that was starting to
go trend the other way.
Yes, trend the other way, right? Yeah. So I mean, 300-pound clean, 400-pound bench, 500-pound squat, right? Yeah. So that was his 3-4-5, and above that, he felt that there was diminishing returns, and that wasn't overly scientific at that time. Yeah. But he obviously was seeing that guys who were benching excessive amount of weights or squatting 800 pounds in the gameplay, it wasn't making the difference as much as speed would. Starting to develop their speed once they reached those levels, they didn't need much more, right? And that was an eye-opening moment for me as a coach, because before that, there used to be a famous guy at the University of Texas, and then before that, obviously Nebraska, where their whole thing was just throw as much weight on there as possible. You know what I mean?
Get strong, yeah. And actually, like the Husker Power program with Boyd Epley, he had a whole sprint thing in there, and everybody just kind of ignored it. But
right, they were like, "Hey, that's we don't need to worry about that." Yeah.
But like you're saying, like going to kind of double down on this a little bit. Okay, so we all have that kid that plays O-line that can squat 500 pounds but can't play a lick of football. Well, why is that? The kid does everything you ask him in the weight room. Well, he's too slow. He's moving the weight. He's strong now. Now we need to work on him moving faster, right? Because that's what's going to transfer. Is he's not quick enough off the ball, right?
Yep.
And then vice versa with our skinnier guys and stuff like that. Like I have nothing to prove this. I do have some science. So there is some research to show that squatting helps with, that squatting helps with change of direction, and they have that. So I firmly believe that squatting actually helps more with agility and change of direction than it does with linear acceleration or linear top end speed.
Interesting.
And because if you think about it, your feet. So where are your feet when you are planning and changing direction? Well, if I'm doing a break, plan, separate, which I'm talking about, my feet are narrow on a quick cut, like a stab cut, right? But if I'm going to do like a wide base crossover, or I'm going to really have to push off hard, my feet are going to widen. Well, that's the squat position. And if I can isometrically hold that before I cut and change direction, I can slam the brakes, decelerate,
and go.
It's technically called braking, and then get out of there. That's where the squat comes in.
Interesting.
Really. Let's go, coach. We got to get you some metrics to get it, man. We get you published, and then I can send you in.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense, right, Dave? Because like you think about
I just want to move next door to coach. So when he goes out and he plays with his kid, he starts getting put through stuff. I throw my kid in there with him.
Yeah.
Listen, but look, coach, and look, obviously I think like the entire basis of, these guys want to get in the weight room. They want to throw, whatever weight on the bar, and you go watch them and they're struggling to get it up, and they're doing this and you're doing that. And I just think, if we all focused more so, and we all know that the faster you move the weight, the more explosive you become, and the better of an athlete it ultimately works out to be, whatever sport you're doing. So to get those guys to kind of flip that mindset to, maybe less weight, but explosion on it, right? And the speed of how fast you're moving the bar and the weight itself is all going to help you more so than loading this thing on, the bars bending, all that stuff, right? And I just think that's so pivotal to, and especially football, where everything happens pretty much within a 10-yard radius of explosion, acceleration, like that stuff. It all happens so fast that the whole strength thing, like rarely are you sitting there and just pushing a guy, right? Where he's there, like you got to move and continue to go. And I love what you said about the squat, especially being a receivers coach, right? The getting in and out of those cuts to explode out. Yeah, my feet go wider so that my base and my framework still stays within it. And now I can hit that cut and get out and explode and run away from the defender, right? Like not be kind of still mud, like I say to my guys, right? Like you got to get out and go. So the faster you can get down and squat and get back up, that stuff all translates to the field itself. It's definitely something. I'm sure that's why your guys are explosive and can figure it all out, is because you go into your weight room and I'm sure it looks a lot different than most high school weight rooms where guys are just struggling to push weight. Sure, bars are flying at a rapid pace, on every set that they're doing.
We do a combination of it, right? Like you said, we have our speed days and we also have our strength days where they are going slower. But I don't want to go below 0.3 meters per second because that won't transfer as much, right? So 0.3 meters per second is like a good heavy where you're feeling it. And we have those times. But then whenever we do anything that is heavy like that, I always contrast it with something explosive afterwards. So
got it.
Like if we're doing our heavy squats, they're going to do some sort of plyometric right after that as a superset. If we're doing heavy bench, we're going to do some sort of plyo push-up or some sort of press or med ball throw to make sure that we're recruiting all those muscle fibers, okay, because we want them to eventually move fast, right? So we got to get them strong, right? We want to keep them injury free, and we also want to make sure that we can recruit those muscle fibers by getting them strong. But we do, like you said, have to get them going fast. But if I can go fast, but I can't, I have no power behind, no strength behind it.
Right.
Okay, let's go back to the wiffle ball thing. If I hit you with a wiffle ball bat as fast as I can, it's going to sting. But if I hit you with a baseball bat, I'm going to knock you over.
100%. 100%.
Very, very, very interesting stuff. It's
I see Dave's brain, like I just see it. Like I see him thinking.
I'm running
about
out of room in my
do.
basement of equipment I've purchased in order to develop athletic enhancement. But
I just see you with your son, with Troy, and I see Troy now all of a sudden like, Dad, what are we doing now? And you're like, nope, this is why we're doing this, buddy. Like, come on now, like let's go. Because look, Dave's son is like 9-10ish age right now, and he the kid can do some things. But like the side of it that I always see Dave, like his mind just starts going in terms of, all right, well, let's see if he can do this, and then we can keep tracking him doing this, and like Dave referenced earlier, like really I was never a track guy. Dave's been a track guy his whole life, and it just wasn't a thing for me. So now with the program I'm at now, one of our football coaches is our indoor and outdoor track guy, who is a big Tony Holler advocate, right? So we've taken his stuff and we're now implementing it into the weight room. So I'm trying to bridge that gap to just expand my knowledge base to afford, to let the kids know, like, hey, this is why, this is the whole thing, but it has to be over encompassing. Like, we're all in this, we're all doing it this way, because if I'm doing one thing with my football guys in the weight room one way, or outside or whatever, just the entire approach to it, and then the track guy is doing something different, now they're hearing two totally different worlds. They don't understand why we're doing this, we're doing that, right? So I think the buy-in, and to have we don't have a strength and conditioning coach that's specific to that, right? So it's just basically the coach that knows the most, by definition. Yeah, we don't have a full-time strength and conditioning guy, dude. It is just like who's ever in there and whoever buys in. Now, we're fortunate to have guys that really kind of understand it, but everybody's from a different school of knowledge, right? Like some guys still think this, some guys want to run with that. I'm fortunate that our head coach is excellent in that facet. And he's like, look, you guys are the experts at this. Like, I want these certain things where I want us to be able to do this. How we get there or how we all make it work, that's on us to figure out in our little think tanks that we do. And believe me, they're think tanks, and it gets heated sometimes, right? Because everybody thinks their way is the way. And, you got to look at what you're doing. And that's why I asked you too about the younger guys, right? Because there's such a gap between, senior in high school, a kid that's a junior, a sophomore.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that we bring in our 8th grade football players,
Great.
from March to May, we get them Mondays and Wednesday nights for an hour and 15 minutes. They come to the high school and we put them through our workouts, right?
Yeah.
To get them introduced to the weight room and to get them rocking and rolling with it. So they're getting that buy-in. And look, for us, like we have about 25, 30 8th graders that are in there. I don't know if they can play a drop of football, but they sure as hell like the weight room and they listen and they understand it. But look, we're teaching that because it's hard to teach that hang clean progression to an 8th grader, right? And it's not about weight on the bar, it's about form and execution. So we already try to get them where, and look, we're sprinting as well. We're doing flying 40s with these guys and whatnot, so that they understand coming in, they have a level of this is the approach we're taking, this is what I'm going to do. Because you know how some of these guys are, right? Like their dad knows this, or there's that, I go to Planet Fitness and I can put all this weight on the bar and and it's like, that's great, buddy. But like, can you get your elbows up here? Can you front squat, right? Can you do some of these little things that I think like that bridges a gap where now you can start that much further ahead in their enhancement and their development as a student athlete.
That kind of helps us too, is so because they're training during the day, I call that the meat and potatoes. So that's when they're getting their squats, all the good stuff that they need to get, their bench, like all the things, their cleans, working on clean farm, our jumps, all those types of things. Our sprints are during the day. And then when they come after school, that's when we can do, like when you see a lot of the stuff that I post, that's a lot of the stuff that we're doing that's more sports specific, right? So when I say sports specific, I'm not talking about putting a band on a football and then we're going to work on throwing that around or something. I mean, I'm talking about like if they need to work on acceleration work, we're going to do more acceleration work for them. All the game speed and change direction, making it more contextual for their positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Like what a lineman does isn't going to be the same as a skill guy. Right. Or vice versa.
So our lineman, the other day we're doing med ball punches from a 3-point stance, our D lineman into a wall. And then the O lineman, we're working on their kick step. And a guy was holding the med ball running at him. And so he's just working on getting his punch out while our skill guys were working on their first step acceleration out of their stance. And we were doing some stuff on the turf with them. Right. So, and our DBs were doing, we were working on them with the T-Apex, backpedaling with resistance, getting that foot in the ground, and then getting assistance coming out of it. So really working on them getting out of that T-plant faster so they can break quicker on ball. So we could do all that after school, though, because they did all the meat and potatoes during the day. So,
and I think that's another huge piece of it. Like, look, we talk to a lot of guys, like whether it be from Texas or North Carolina, like where, football is the first block of the day, or their phys ed class, like the athletes go to the weight room, or they do where they can get that extra time. Yeah. Look, some schools have that in Jersey, some schools don't have that, right? And if it is, it's the phys ed teacher opening the door to the weight room saying, go in and lift, or here's our workout. It's not specific to where you're in there and like, this is what we're doing. This is your workout. This is how, and you can monitor it. It's not like that in Jersey, where now you're trying to factor into your practice window a lift or a run or something. Like the only time you can really do that kind of stuff and get the ample amount of time, because you also don't want to burn them out in terms of time. You know what I mean? Like we're not 3 hours here or there. I'm fortunate that the high school I'm at, we get out of school at 1:30, which is unbelievable, right? Like it is probably an hour. Yeah, it's probably an hour and a half before most other high schools around get out at all. So we can get a little bit of that extra stuff, but it's still not the same as having a class during the day to get it out and to work and to get that extra time. I mean, if you think about it, 3-sport athletes never get a full even off season to lift or work out other than maybe 3-4 weeks in the summer, right? If he or she is a 3-sport athlete, it's really hard to find that time. I think that's a big thing that coaches and that we've talked to, like it's hard to find it.
Yeah. Yep.
No doubt. Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Phenomenal stuff. You're a coach and a scientist at the same time, which makes it awesome. I'm a nerd like that. I enjoy those kind of things.
We both are. It's funny. Like
we just gotta prove what we're doing, right? Like you said, kids want to know, and like it drives me nuts if I can't tell them why. Like not only the why, like we're gonna tell them the how we're gonna do it, the why we're gonna do it, but then like really what is this going to help you with, right? Like and so if they don't get that connection, then it's not going to transfer anyway as much as it should, right? So like
absolutely
when they know
not.
like when they know like, hey, I'm doing this, it's going to help me with my first step get off, like, and that coach told me I need to work on my first step get off. Now I have a purpose when I'm in here, so I can focus on this with a purpose and not just, I was told to be in the weight room, so I'm coming to the weight room.
That's the hardest thing. Okay. Strength and conditioning and speed development, it's over time, and that's and daily work at it, and
daily deposits.
You don't see results immediately. It takes time to get it. So, but I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's great having you, Coach. Fantastic job. And then I already dived through your presentation. I got it saved. Next thing.
It's been on my tabs for weeks, dude, and every day it's like I just dive into a little bit more of it. But Coach, appreciate you taking the time. Really love it. High level stuff for our guys and our viewers that I think really, and we've had, like Dave said, like I don't know if it's my algorithm or not, but Illinois is in the forefront of what's going on. So I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of names. A hell of a staff you have there, and you utilize your guys, like, which is unbelievable to have that access to guys that are on the cutting edge of all of these things. Not to mention, look, facilities are one thing, but you've also made it so that, look, like you don't have to have all these bells and whistles to get it done. You know what I mean? So fit it to your program and your kids. Can't thank you enough for coming on and dropping some knowledge for us on Friday.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate too. I appreciate it, guys. Like we have 20 sections of strength and conditioning during the day. So like it's when I got here, we had 3. We went from 3 to 20. And so I got great staff. So it's not just me. There's about 10 of us that are all doing it at different periods and different times. And we got anywhere from 2 to 6 guys up in the weight room per period and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it does take an army to do this, but it's been great. And we've been doing a great job with it. And I appreciate you guys for putting on this podcast and doing all this great stuff you guys are doing too.
Appreciate it, Coach. We gotta get you back. So like let's look down the road and talk, because I mean we could go into this stuff and keep diving in. So anytime we can do anything for you, or if you want to get back on, or you got that you feel like you want to really get out there and talk about or whatever, like feel free. Absolutely, just reach out and we'll make it happen.
Awesome, guys. Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate you, Coach. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
You too.
That was great pod. We will resume next week after Mother's Day.
We got a good couple, like we got some good weeks coming. We got some good guests coming on in the next couple weeks. Like a lot of good stuff with, a lot of college guys that are, I don't know, after 170 something podcasts, I don't know if the word's getting out or if it's just scheduling in terms of guys getting off. Yeah, dude, that was our 177th podcast that we put out.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think I'm gonna have to take this and just mass upload this to Spotify too.
Look, I have college coaches, Dave, reaching out to me daily about awesome. Hey, I would love to get on. I would love to this, or right now we're on the road, but give me a couple. I mean, we got bookings down the road and whatnot. Like people just want to, and I love it because guys get on here and they talk about what they're passionate about, or, what maybe they've seen and this and that. And then we get to see it, like how it's different all over the country or level to level. Like we're given, our viewers are getting a lot of stuff from a lot of areas of expertise. And I just think it's, the knowledge, it's unbelievable because you can take something away from everything that we talk, every one of these guys that we talk to, you know what I mean? It's awesome to see how they do it in different areas as well. Like, obviously, Illinois has been time into the strength and conditioning aspect of it. You know, I mean, that facility is unbelievable, dude. Like unbelievable. I mean, but that's a lot of sections. You imagine like 20 classes of like that a day, male, female, like, you know what I mean? Like you really got to be cross your T's, dot your I's to know what you're doing and implementing it, how it goes, right? Each coach is probably going to want a little something different. I mean, look, you've dealt with it when you know, in high schools and whatnot. Everybody's got a different area that they feel needs to be focused on. So, I mean, that was awesome. He's really good, dude. I'd love to have that guy in my building. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, he's a difference maker. There's no doubt about it. All right,
100%.
Till next week. Have a great Mother's Day, everybody.
Yup.
Enjoy to all the moms out there, and
appreciate you, Mom. I love my mom. She's a gem. I don't know how she freaking dealt with me, but holy shit. I don't know who was more of a handful, my father or me. So like, God bless, brother.
God bless. Till next time.
All right.